All right, Shabbos say good morning, Alichtika Lag Ba'omer. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar, Steve and Tarizin, for dedicating all of Shurman's Rosh Hashanah this month in honor of their newest grandson, Matan Shmuel Aaron. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, he will grow to be an incredible mentor at Meva Esrim Shanim Tovos. And to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Baruch Meir and Rina Dubin, in memory of Akiva Fogel, Zichron Livracha, Akiva Ben Chaim Baruch, Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Hashem will have an aliyah, and the family Inuchala. So with that, let us begin with beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Excuse me. Today's daf is Mem Aleph 41. And we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Mem Amud Beis 40b. Just to orient ourselves a little bit, if you remember again, we left off yesterday with the incredible Mishnah detailing the Kriyas HaTorah, the Torah reading for Yom Kippur. And again, the various processes involved, including the handing of the Torah to multiple people, as well as the actual reading, the sections that the Kohen Gadol read, and then ultimately, again, the brachos recited by the Kohen Gadol himself. So we are picking up in Meretz Hashem Mem Amud Beis 40b, and we left off with Kohen Gadol Omed Umekabel, which is 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. On 40b, says the Gemara, Omed, so the Kohen Gadol Omed Umekabel v'korei. The Kohen Gadol goes ahead and is standing, and ultimately, again, he receives the Torah, and then he goes ahead and he reads it. Omed Mechlal Yoshev. Now, the fact that the Mishnah says that he stands indicates to us that he was initially sitting, and now he stood up. But we learned that the only people who are permitted to sit in the Azara are Davidic kings. So how is the Kohen Gadol permitted to sit in the Beis Hamikdash area? How could it be that the Kohen Gadol is sitting? To which the Gemara says, ultimately, again, where is this process? Where is this taking place? This is so now the Gemara calls it the Ezras Nashim, women's section. I will say, what's the Ezras Nashim? That's the Azara. That's the courtyard. So remember again, that's the primary courtyard you walk into when you enter into the Beis Hamikdash compound, where ultimately, again, the 4 chambers in each corner. If you keep going, you go through Shar Nikanor into what we'll call the Beis Hamikdash area proper. So where is all of this taking place? It's taking place in the Ezras Nashim, and the Ezras Nashim sitting is permitted. Hachanai Ezras Nashim. Some may say, is that true? Vehechan korin bo ba'azara. Where does the Kohen Gadol do the Kriya? Ultimately, again, in the Azara, in the courtyard. Harabbayis and Harabbayis Shene Emar, top of Mem Aleph. Shene Emar Vayikra bo lifnei harachovesh lifnei sharamayim. Amar Chista be'ezras nashim. So bottom line, the Gemara explains that where does the Kriyas HaTorah on Yom Kippur take place? It takes place on the Ezras Nashim, the women's section, what we colloquially call the Azara, the courtyard. I will say, so just for clarification purposes, there are effectively 2 courtyards in the Beis Hamikdash. The courtyard we thought we were referring to is the courtyard you would enter into. Let's say if you go through Shar Nikanor, right, you go up the steps, go through Shar Nikanor, go down the steps. What are you looking at right in front of you? The Mizbeach. The Mizbeach, right? That's where the Duchen is, where the Kohanim would go out and Duchen, right? The Levim would sing. So we originally thought that Kriyas Torah is taking place in that courtyard. Kamashmon, the Gemara says, no. Kriyas Torah is taking place in the first courtyard, we'll call the outer courtyard, also known as... Good. Okay, sorry, I just went blank there for a second. Okay. Good. So the Gemara is as follows. So we'll say top of Mem Aleph. So v'korei acharei mos v'ach ba'asar. So remember again, the Mishnah then said, Kohen reads 3 different sections. First, he reads Parshas Acharei Mos. Then he goes ahead and goes to the section of Ach B'asar, which also details the sacrificial avoda of Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, Ramini, so I'm both saying now, just to be clear, the sections of Acharei Mos, right? The sections of Acharei Mos and Ach B'asar are not contiguous, which means that the Kohen Gadol is skipping, right? He's skipping in the Torah to get from one section to another. But we learned that you are permitted to skip in Navi, but you're not permitted to skip in Torah. In other words, that's when going ahead and reading the Torah, Kriyas Torah, you're not permitted to skip. Rabbi lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Kan bichdei sheyifsok hatorgaman, kan bichdei shelo yifsok hatorgaman. Well, this is actually very interesting. When do we say that you can't stop? So say, you can't skip. You can't skip if there's going to be a lull. So for example, remember again, the Kohen Gadol would read, and the Turgaman would go ahead and explain and translate. So you can skip in the Torah as long as you can get to what we'll call your second destination before the Turgaman finishes explaining. But if it's going to take you more time to get to your second destination, and the Turgaman is going to already be finished, that creates a tircha de tzibura, an unnecessary lull and just hardship for the tzibur, and therefore one will not be permitted to do that. So the Gemara says, we learned, so we'll say, but we learned that you could skip in Navi, you can't skip in Torah, and how much can you skip in Navi? So you could skip from one section to another section in Navi as long as you get to your second destination before the Torgaman finishes his explanation. What do we infer from that? Michlal, dibit Torah, klal lo. What I can infer from that, we'll say, is in Torah, you can't skip at all. Torah, you can't skip at all. Am Rabbi lo kasha, kan be'inyan echad, kan b'shnei inyanim. So we'll say, it's very interesting. When are you not allowed to skip in Torah? You can't go from one topic to another, but you can skip from one section to another section, provided that they are in the same topic. But we learned again. So the truth is, this is not a question. Now this Brisa supports what we just said. Brisa says, we'll say in Torah, you can skip from one section to another, provided that's what? You stay on topic. You stay on topic. In Navi, you can skip from one section to another, even if you're going from one topic to another. Bekan, both by Torah and by Navi, you could only skip from one section to another, provided that you can get to your second destination before the Turgaman, before the translator or explainer finishes his explanation and translation. Ve'ein medalgin min navi lenavi, but you cannot skip from one navi. Like you can't skip from Yoshua to Shoftim, right? You can't skip from one navi to another navi. Ubenavi shashneim asar, but in Trei Asar, we'll call it the 12, right? The 12 smaller prophets. Medalgin, you're permitted to skip even from one navi to another navi. Ubevachlo yidalig misof aser for the tchilah. So provided that you don't skip from the beginning of Trei Asar until the end of Trei Asar. So I will say, so bottom line, what's the takeaway over here? The takeaway over here is that, yes, when the Kohen Gadol would read on Yom Kippur, he would skip. He would skip from one section to another. But how are you allowed to do that? Number one, same topic. What's the topic? Yom Kippur, good, not a true question, right? Yom Kippur, that's number one. And number two, he was able to get from section A to section B before the Turgaman finished his explanation. Good. That's the Kohen Gadol was able to skip. Beautiful. The goal as HaTorah umanicha becheko. So remember again, I will say after the Kohen Gadol finished, ultimately again reading in Achremos and then Ach Ba'asar, then he would roll it up and he would go ahead and, right, he would read another section, Baal Peh, and he would say, Yoser Mima, there's more that is written, there's more in here than what I read to you. So the Gemara says, V'kol kach lama, why do you have to go through this whole process? Sholahotzi las al Sefer Torah. In order that Chas v'Shalom, one should not come to disparage the Torah, thinking that there are sections that are missing. So we'll say, so since he's reading something by heart, remember again, why is he reading the third section by heart? So really because it's going to take too long to roll to it. So therefore he has to almost like make like the disclaimer. The disclaimer is, guys, just realize everything I'm reading to you is written in here, right? Don't think that I'm reading this last section, Baal Peh, because it's not written in Chas v'Shalom. It's in here. Just, it would be a tircha de tzibur. It would be an unnecessary drain or unnecessary annoyance. Annoyance is the wrong word. Tircha, unnecessary inconvenience. inconvenience for the tzibur for me to start rolling this. We'll say, but you know how this is, right? Right? When Kriyas Torah comes, if the Torah is open to the wrong spot and they have to roll it, right? Come on, what's going through your mind? Come on, man, get your act together. Right, Gabbai, come on, what have you been doing? Right, where's Avron over here? Right, what have you been doing? Right, where have you been? Where have you been? Now, and by the way, often that's just like 3 seconds, right? Or even by the way, even something's on the Balkore. Because sometimes it happens. Let's say an earlier meaning, uses the Torah, so by the time they open up, right, and the Balkore is moving. Again, there's an annoying. It's so funny, like how human nature is. Like I feel like this sense of resentment building up inside of me. Why does someone not take care of this ahead of time? Right? So again, that's tircha de tzibura. Tircha de tzibura just means we don't want to inconvenience the tzibur. So we'll say that's how the Kohen Gadol reads it al peh. Incredible. V'lichreche l'sefer v'likri. So we'll say, so same idea. So why don't we just roll? I don't know, what's the big deal? Just roll. It's Yom Kippur. We'll say, here's the thing with Yom Kippur. Right? Here's the thing with Yom Kippur. I always say this every year. Where are you going anyway? Right? Where are you going? Right? There's not like a variety of activities planned for Yom Kippur that you're going to be late for something. So Lamaisa, just go ahead and let them roll the sefer. What's the big deal? To which the Gemara says, I'm Rav Huna Yehuda. We'll say first wide line, we do not roll Sifrei Torah in shul. Or B'tzibur, in front of the congregation. So I'll say this actually is an interesting halacha, that there is a concept of tircha de tzibura, of inconveniencing the tzibur, and therefore again, we don't roll Sifrei Torah in tzibur. Now, obviously, what that means is, to the degree that one could be proactive and ensure that the Sefer Torah is exactly where it needs to be before they open it up, that is ideal. That is ideal. So therefore, we're not going to start having the Kohen Gadol rolling the Sefer Torah while there are thousands of people standing right there. By the way, I just do want to point out this something very interesting. Remember, you'll ask yourself, thousands of people by Yom Kippur. So remember again, there's no mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel by Yom Kippur. Right? So what is everybody doing there? So if you remember back to Maseches Yuma, the Gemara said, before the sun would even come up on Yom Kippur, the Azar, the courtyard, was already packed with people. So let's say, why were there people there? Why? They wanted to see the Kohen Gadol. So let's say, so again, Halavai will be Zocha Meretz Hashem Bekarov, to experience Yom Kippur in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not a mitzvah. You don't have to be there. But the truth is, where else would you want to be on Yom Kippur other than the epicenter of tshuva and the epicenter of slicha v'chapar, the epicenter of forgiveness, not just for all of Klal Yisrael, but for all humanity. An incredible, incredible idea. In any event, so the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, "V'lei say sefer Torah achrina." Oh, so another suggestion: take out a second sefer. What's the big deal over here? Just read the first 2 sections from one sefer, because you can roll that pretty quickly, and just read the third section from a second sefer. What's the big deal? So the Gemara says, Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar. What are we concerned about? We're concerned about, say that if you bring a Sefer Torah, second Sefer, what are people going to assume? Right? There's something wrong with the first. I would say, by the way, I just want to point out something absolutely amazing. What do you see from this Gemara? People's default reaction is that if they see something out of the norm, there must be something wrong with this thing. Right? And I will say, it's true, it's not just with Sefer Torah that people think this. It's with other people that we think this as well, right? Something happens or something occurs that I don't understand, that doesn't fully fit into a construct of the way that I live. Oh, what's wrong with that person, right? What's wrong with that situation? In this case, what's wrong with that Torah? Reish Lakish says it's because it generates a bracha shenitzricha, unnecessary bracha. Because if we go ahead and we bring a second sefer, you then have to make a second bracha. But remember, again, I will say, it's not like we're giving aliyah sound over here. Who's making the bracha? The Kohen Gadol. But it already made a bracha on the first sefer. So bringing a second sefer creates another situation for an unnecessary bracha. One second. So the first reason we say you don't bring a second sefer is because we're concerned that it reflects poorly on sefer number 1. People will think that this third parsha is missing from the first sefer. So is that true? They were concerned about that. I was like, when Rosh Chodesh, excuse me, when Rosh Chodesh Teves falls on Shabbos, I will say Rosh Chodesh Teves is always Hanukkah. Rosh Chodesh Teves that falls on Shabbos, I will say, what do? Maybe Shalosh Toros. We take out 3 Sifrei Torah. The Korei Achas Min Yarosh Yom. One is the Parashas HaShavua. The Achas Rosh Chodesh. One is Rosh Chodesh. The Achas B'Shal Chanukah. And one is Chanukah. So I say, you see, when we don't say but you're going to take out 3 Sfarim, people are going to think that the first one is missing something. To which the Gemara says, Tlasa Gavri b'Tlasa Sifri Leka Pagama. Chad Gavra b'Trei Sifri Ike Pagama. We'll say, you're right. When you have 3 different aliyos, there's no concern of pigam. Since essentially each kriya is self-contained and each aliyah is self-contained, people will understand what's happening over here. What's the concern over here by Yom Kippur and the Beis HaMikdash? There's one person. So with one person, then we get a bit more concerned that if you go from Sefer to Sefer, it could chas v'shalom look like there's something missing in Sefer number 1. Incredible. So therefore, bottom line, remember, that's why I understand the practice. So first 2 sections, which are in close proximity to each other, and you could roll quickly to Kriya number 2. Before the Torgamon finishes explaining Kriya number 1, great, you can read that out of the same Sefer. After that, Kriya number 3 is already too far. Kohen Gadol rolls it up, right, goes ahead and says, makes a disclaimer, Chevra, everything is written in here, everything is written here. He then proceeds to read the 3rd section, Baal Peh. To read the 3rd section by heart. Incredible. Says the Gemara, so I'll say ultimately again, so they make, the Kohen Gadol makes the bracha on the Torah in the same way that we generally make brachos in shul. So we'll say, what are the brachos that the Kohen Gadol makes? We saw the Rashi made reference to this. Al ha'avoda, a bracha about sacrificial service. Al oda, a bracha of gratitude. Al mechilas avon, a bracha regarding forgiveness of sin. Kitiknon. Al mikdash b'fnei atzmo, we go and we make a bracha about the Beis HaMikdash. The al kohanim b'fnei atzmo, the kohanim get their own bracha. Al Yisrael b'fnei atzmo, al Klal Yisrael, the al Yerushalayim b'fnei atzmo. So we'll say again, this is the Seder brachos. We didn't go through it, but Rashi in the Mishnah actually gives you the text for all of these brachos as well. Beautiful. Tanra Abanon. So this is very beautiful. Tanra Abanon. Hashar tefillah, trina, rina, ubakasha. Supposed to listen to this. After the Kohen Gadol goes ahead and finishes everything. I'm sorry, I forgot the citation from the Mishnah is Vashar tefillah. And so let's say, so what's interesting is as follows. How do you translate that phrase? Hashar tefillah. So Rashi says, Tanra Abanon, Hashar tefillah, trina, rina, bakasha. Look at Rashi, almost right across in Rashi. Tanra Abanon Hashar tefillah, zohi shish bracha achos, ubo tefillah, trina, rina, bakasha shamcha. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So the Gemara says over here, after the Kohen Gadol finishes reciting these brachos that we just mentioned, there's one last bracha that encompasses all of these other elements. What are the other elements? Tefillah, prayer. Trina, supplication. Rina, joy or joyous praise. Bakasha, requests. Sha'amcha Yisrael tzrichim livasheya. And I will say that's a phrase that's put in because Klal Yisrael, your nation, needs salvation. V'chosein b'shomea tefillah. And we'll say afterwards they close out that last bracha, which is a tefillah, an all-encompassing prayer, with the phrase or with the concluding phrase, Shomea tefillah Hashem, you are the one who hears all prayer. Incredible. We'll say, so that is the end, right? That's the end of the Kohen Gadol's kriya, so to speak. So says the Gemara. So we'll say, what happens afterwards? Interesting. What happens afterwards? This is so interesting. Mikan ve'elech. Kol echad ve'echad maybe Sefer Torah mitoch beiso. Afterwards, everyone brings their own Sefer Torah, the Korebo, and they read their Sefer. The Kol Kach Lama, and we'll say, what is that? In other words, why is it that everybody's bringing their own Sefer Torah and reading their Sefer in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash? Kedei laharos chazuz al rabim, in order to show the beauty of their Sefer to the general public. They will say, what's going on over here? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Mikan ve'elech, After the Kohen Gadol finishes his Kriya, so now he's read all three sections, he said the brachos, maybe Sefer Torah maybe. So La'azara, ultimately, everyone brings a Sefer Torah from their own home to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. Tekasavar, Ein Erev al Tzal Yom Kippurim, Inami Yerushalayim Dal Tasenu Ulos Balayla Uma'ar V'nes Kula. So I say Rashi's just getting into the technical issue over here about how you carry a Sefer Torah from your home to the Beis HaMikdash. One of two possibilities: either that the Tana of the Mishnah holds that the concept of carrying of Hotzah does not apply on Yom Kippur, or possibility number two is that Yerushalayim is considered to be an enclosed area, and therefore by definition you can carry. In any event, so after the Kohen Gadol finishes his Kriya, everyone brings their own Sefer Torah. And why are we doing this? Rashi says, Laharos chazuso shall Sefer Torah v'nuyav Tamar Mar Zekili Vanveu, his noah lafanav b'mitzvos, b'Sefer Torah noah, b'tzitzis noah. So we'll say, why are people bringing their Sefer Torah? To show the beauty of their Sefer. Right? I'm showing off a little bit in a healthy way. Right? Look at the beautiful Sefer Torah that I have. Why I will say, so what's the element of having, or what's the mitzvah of having a beautiful Sefer Torah? It's ultimately, again, Zekeli Vanveu. Beautification, right? Hiddur mitzvah. So I will say, so I'm trying to show that not only do I fulfill the mitzvahs, but I fulfill the mitzvahs in a beautiful way. And I will say, what does this have to do with Yom Kippur? What does this have to do with Yom Kippur, right? Why is this happening over here? So I will say, it teaches us a tremendous lesson. Yom Kippur is all about slicha v'chapara, right? Yom Kippur is about atonement. On Yom Kippur, we are confident that we've been atoned for, that we've been forgiven. So we'll say Yom Kippur is not only the close out of the previous year, but what? Effectively, it's also the clean slate in the beginning, first day, so to speak, of the year ahead. Rosh Hashanah is the first day, but Lamaisi Yom Kippur is the day when my slate is clean and I start again. We'll say, what is the key to spiritual success? So the truth is, there's not one answer, but on Yom Kippur, what seems to be happening over here is Hiddur Mitzvah. He'll say, what does Hiddur Mitzvah represent? Hiddur Mitzvah represents going above and beyond. It means not just living life, being satisfied with the actual technical fulfillment of my obligations, but it means going above and beyond in my Yiddishkeit. It's what the Ramchal calls being a chassid. What does it mean to be a chassid? A chassid is a Hiddur Mitzvah Jew. A chassid says, I know what my obligations are, but I'm not satisfied with simply fulfilling obligations. I'm not satisfied with simply getting by. I'm not satisfied with simply being in the right. I want to push myself above and beyond. I want to be a Hiddur Mitzvah Jew. I want to be the kind of person who does everything not just enough, again, to satisfy an obligation, but in a beautiful, loving, self-actualizing way. That's why the Sefer Torah coming out ultimately again into the Azara, because the beautiful Sefer Torah is one of the greatest manifestations and physical embodiments of Hiddur Mitzvah. And the secret to success, I will say, in our Yiddishkeit is to be a Hiddur Mitzvah chassid type of personality. A person who is not content with simply getting by, but a person who wants to push himself to constantly do more. Incredible. We'll say, Shkoyach, that's the end of the sugya. New Mishnah. Parashas HaMelech Ketzah. So we'll say, so now, once we started talking about Torah readings that are occurring in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, so there's another one. Parashas HaMelech. We'll say, now what's Parashas HaMelech? What's the section of the king? Here we go. Ketzad. Matzi Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag B'Shmini. The Matzei Shvius. So we'll say, it's actually interesting. So after the first day of Sukkot, so we'll say, remember again, after the first day of Sukkot, which in Eretz Yisrael is now what? The first night of Chalamayid, right? Shel Chag of Sukkot, B'Shmini. We'll see what B'Shmini means in just a moment. B'Matzei Shvius. This is on the Sukkot right after the Shemitah year. So Matzei Shvius, right after the Shemitah year, Osen lo bima shel eitz ba'azara, they will make a large platform of wood in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. V'hu yoshev aleh, and the king would go ahead and sit on this platform. Shneimar, Miketz Sheva Shanim B'Moed. So we'll say, so what would happen? Chazan HaKnesses notel Sefer Torah v'nosnel Rosh HaKnesses. So the Chazan, we're spoken with them yesterday. Who's the Chazan? I will say, Chazan is the Shamus. He's the logistics guy in the Beis HaMikdash. He would take the Sefer Torah, give it to the Rosh. Who's the Rosh? The Rosh ultimately, again, is the Gabbai. The Rosh HaKnesses nosnel Skan. The Rosh ultimately will give it to the Skan. The Skan is the assistant Kohen Gadol. Vaskan, nosnel Kohen Gadol. The Skan would ultimately give it to the Kohen Gadol. And then the Kohen Gadol nosnel Melech. Kohen Gadol would give it to the king. Va'melech omeid umekabel the korei yoshev. Both say, so literally what this means is the king receives it. Omeid, he stands up, receives the Torah. Korei yoshev, and he reads sitting down. Okay? So the Gemara says, well, say, so this is what we call hakel. Hakel, the mitzvah that the king has to gather the people together on the first night of Chol Hamoed, second night of Sukkot, in the Sukkot following the Shemitah year. And this was the process. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, Agrippas HaMelech. So King Agrippas, now both say, who is King Agrippas? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says it's the third to last short line. Agrippas HaMelech, Melech Yisrael Haya. He was a Jewish king. Mizaro Shel Hordus. He was a descendant of Herod. V'hu shenechrav beis hamikdash b'yamav. Now both say, Agrippas is the king during whose reign, Agrippas was the king Agrippas was the king who during his reign, the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. He was the sitting monarch when the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. He was a descendant of Herod. Rabbi said, this is very important. Who was Herod? Herod was an Eved, right? Herod was an Eved Kanani. He was a non-Jewish slave to the Hashmonai family. Herod essentially led a revolt against the Hashmonaim. You remember the story. He wiped out the entire Hashmonai family, save one girl. Why one girl? Why one woman? He wanted to marry her. So remember again, the Gemara records the story. She goes up to the rooftop of her home, and she will not marry him. And she cries out. She says, "From this point, I am the last remaining member of the Hashmonai family. Anyone from this point forward, whoever claims that he is a descendant of the Hashmonai family, is a slave." And she throws herself to her death. So this was the story of Herod. Right? So we'll say. So remember again, Eved Kanani. So Agrippas then is a descendant of Herod. So now watch this story. Agrippas HaMelech, Amad, V'kibel V'kara Omeid. So we'll say Agrippas, who by the way, Agrippas was a great man. He was a great man. So Agrippas, when he would receive the Torah, he would remain standing and read the Torah. So we'll say, remember again, even though we just said before that normally the king stands to receive the Torah and then what? And can then sit to read it. Agrippas chose to remain standing when reading the Torah. V'shabchu Chachamim. And ultimately, the Chachamim praised him for this because they felt that it was just an incredible display of kavod. Even though he could have sat down, it was an incredible display of kavod Torah that he chose to remain standing. Let's listen to this. But when Agrippas got to the section that said, "You may not place upon you a foreign man, ish nachri, an alien man." I will say what this means is a king has to be a descendant of David HaMelech, right? The Torah doesn't say that, but Lamaisa, again, we know that, well, the Torah says the king has to be from Shevet Yehuda, and the king cannot be a convert. The king cannot be a convert, or for that matter, descendant of converts. So we'll say, so now Agrippas reads this pasuk, Avlo sucha v'seis alecha ish nachri. Ultimately, again, you cannot place an alien man upon you. So we'll say, what did he just read? He just read his own disqualification. And we'll say, remember again, Tosas discusses this, that it could be that Agrippa, we want to be clear, we're not doubting that Agrippas was Jewish, because it's quite possible, again, that Lamaisa, again, his mother was Jewish, right? His mother, we'll see, his mother was Jewish. I shouldn't say that as a possibility. His mother was Jewish. The issue just is on his father's side. He has Eved Canaani blood going through him. As a result, ultimately, he is not fit for the monarchy. So he reads this pasuk. Listen to the reaction. The Gemara says, Zolguin of Demos, his eyes filled with tears. Because Agrippas was a good guy. He was a good man. His eyes filled with tears, recognizing that he was really unfit for the monarchy. Amrullah, they said to him, Al tisyare Agrippas, do not fear. Do not fear. Achinu ata. You are a brother, right? Achinu ata. So I'll say, you are a brother, you are a brother. So they tried to make Agrippas feel better. Okay, we'll discuss that story in just a little bit. The mitchilas ila dvarim at shema ushma vayam shamoa aser to aser kisechal aser uparshas hamelach brachos uklolos. And we'll say these are all the sections you read from the beginning of Chumash Devarim until Shema. Then you read again Shema vayam shamoa aser to aser kisechala, the section of the king, brachos and klolos, blessing and curses. Ad shegomer kol parsha brachos. Sorry, ad shegomer kol parsha. So he finished the entire section. So that's all the kriyas. So brachos. Shekohen Gadol mevarich osan, the same brachos that the Kohen Gadol made on Yom Kippur. So mevarich osan, Samelech mevarich osan. The king makes these very same brachos. Ella shenosin shal regalim tachas mechilas avon. The only difference is, whereas the Kohen Gadol speaks about forgiveness of sin, the king just adds in a reference to the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Beautiful. So we'll say, this is the Mishnah of Hakel. There it is. So it says the Gemara, Bishmini. Then we'll say, here's the problem. The Mishnah says, when did all of this occur? Matzah Yom Tov Harishon, after the first day of Yom Tov, Bishmini, on the 8th. Then we'll say, what does the 8th mean? So the Gemara first thing means the 8th day. If it was the 8th, so the Gemara says 8th day, can't be the 8th day because it says that what? You read it on Matzah Yom Tov of the first day. So the Gemara says Ema Bishminis. It means when? On the 8th year. I will say, what's the 8th year? The 8th year is the first year after a Shemitah cycle. So I will say, now here's what's interesting is there are many different ways, right? The Torah uses many different words and the Mishnah uses many different words to describe the day on which we go ahead and do Hakel. Why all of the indicators or why all the descriptors? To which the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, why do I need all of these descriptions? Rashi says over here, Tzrichi, Kol Simonin Halalu, Miketz Shnas Hashmita, Bechag Hasukos or Moed. So what's right? It tries to tell me that it's at the right, it's Motzei Shmita on Sukkot, on the. So why do you need all these indicators? Because of Rachmana Miketz, if it would have just said at the end, Havamina Nimnu Mehashta, I would have thought that Allah Chalamaisa, we begin to count from now, i.e. even from Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Avagav Lo Mitzrayim B'Shmita, because of Rachmana Shmita, because of Rachmana Shmita, if we would have just said Shmita, Havamina V'so Shmita, I would have thought maybe this takes place at the end of the Shemitah year, because of Rachmana B'Moed, therefore it says on Sukkot, because of B'Moed, if it said on Sukkot, Havamina Meiresh Shasa, out of maybe the beginning of the year, because of Rachmana B'Chag HaSukkos, because of Rachmana B'Chag HaSukkos, we would have just said Chag HaSukkos, Havamina Filu Yom Tov Acharon, I would have thought maybe even the end of Sukkot, because of Rachmana, B'Bo Kol Yisrael, when all of Klal Yisrael comes on the days, Baschalta Demoed at the beginning of the Yom Tov. Incredible. Fine. So it says, so therefore, again, I need all of those descriptors to explain to me that when is all of this occurring? On Motzei, the first day of Yom Tov. Right? Motzei, the first day. So second night of Sukkot, first night of Chol Hamoed, on the 8th year, which is the first year after the Shemitah year. Incredible. The Chazan HaKnesses, note, I'll say it, Rabbi Shmuel Silber. So remember again, we said before the process, the Chazan gives it to the Rosh gives it to the Skan gives it to the Kohen Gadol gives it to the Melech. Says the Gemara, what do you see from here? Shamas mina cholkim kavod letalmid b'makom hara. Let's say similar Gemara we had before. What do you see from here? See that you can give kavod to the student in the presence of the Rebbe. In other words, you're being mechabed all of these people in the presence of the king. So what do you see? You see that halacha l'maisa you could give kavod to the student in the presence of the Rebbe. To which the Gemara says, Amar Abaye kulam mishum kavod hamelech. Ultimately, again, all of it is out of deference to the king. So we'll say incredible. So all of it is out of deference to the king. To which the Gemara says, "V'hamelech omer u'mekabel v'kori v'yoshev, Agrippas hamelech amad v'kibel v'kara omer." So we'll say, so remember again, the Gemara said that the king would stand up, and ultimately again receive the Torah. Then he would sit down and read. Agrippas did something a little bit different. Agrippas stood to receive the Torah and remained standing while he read. To which the Gemara says, one second, Omeid mechlal yoshev. Now, also the fact that it says that the king stood up in order to receive the Torah indicates to us what? That he was originally sitting. But how could he be sitting? But how is he sitting? I will say we learned that only Davidic kings could sit inside of the sitting we had before, inside of the Azara. So I will say it's very fascinating. In both of these Gemaras, both by the Kohen Gadol and by the king, by Hakel, the Havamina is where is all of this taking place in what we'll call the interior courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. Kamash Malon, where is it taking place? In the Ezras Nashim, the exterior courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, where yeshiva, where sitting is absolutely permitted. Incredible. V'shabchu chachamim. And I will say again, the chachamim praised Agrippas. What are they praising for? For standing during the Kriyas HaTorah. Shabchu mechlal the shapir avid. I will say here's what's interesting. The fact that they praised him indicates to us what? That what Agrippas did was good. But is that true? Hamravashi, both say, get ready for this. Afilaman da amar nasi shemachal al kvodo machal melech shemachal al kvodo ein kvodo machal. I will say this is a fascinating idea, right? There are certain positions in life that come with kavod, that come with honor, and there's certain honor which could be forgiven, right? But there's other honor which cannot be forgiven. So, for example, a parent could be mochal on their kavod. I also we know this. Mikra din, when a parent walks in the room, a child is supposed to stand up. Yet, very often, children don't do that. So, what's the pshat? Is because children aren't respectful. So, first of all, it's good. It happens to be. I will say, it happens to be. See, parents sometimes think that it is awkward to go ahead and teach their children about kavod. Because it feels like self-serving. It's not. If you don't teach your children about how to give kavod, so where are they going to learn it from? Where are they going to learn it from? I will say again, it's a general idea that, I spoke about this last week, that people think that the primary source of chinuch is a yeshiva or a school. It's not true. The primary source of chinuch is the home. Schools, yeshivas, day schools, they partner with parents. It's not parents partnering with schools. It's schools partnering with parents. Primary chinuch. So it's a biyat. The Aruch HaShulchan brings down, very often children don't stand up when their parents come into their room. So Aruch HaShulchan says there's an assumed mechila, assumed forgiveness, that parents forgive that level of kavod. They don't, right? I'm mochel on it. So there's certain forms of kavod you can be mochel on, and other forms of kavod that you can't be mochel on. The reason you can't forgive it is because it's not your kavod to forgive. So, for example, a Talmid Chacham cannot forgive certain elements of his kavod. A king is not permitted to be mochel on his kavod. Why? Because the kavod doesn't belong to him. The kavod belongs to the office, right? The kavod belongs to the position. And because of that, it's not yours to forgive. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. If the king is supposed to sit, when he's reading, then sit. And Agrippas, what right do you have to be mochel on the kavod of the monarchy? Mitzvah shiny. We'll say for a mitzvah it's different. And therefore, really what Agrippas is doing over here is he's giving kavod to the Torah. So giving kavod to the Torah, giving kavod to mitzvahs, giving kavod to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is permitted. That type of mechila is absolutely permitted. Beautiful. We'll say, so now this is an incredible Gemara. So remember again, so what happened? Agrippas is reading, part of the reading for Hakel is the section of the king. So in the section of the king, what does it say? Som tasim alecha melech mikerev achecha. Place upon yourselves a king from the midst of your brethren, which means the king can't be a convert, the king can't be a former Evet Kenani. The king again, it's compounded. The king has to be from Shevet Yehuda. So Agrippas reads this, Zolgo ein of Dima, and he becomes very emotional. Agrippas was a good man. Agrippas was a righteous man. So what did he essentially just read? What did he read? He essentially read that he's disqualified. I will say, which by the way also tells something amazing. That clearly, kings at a certain point during Jewish history were incredibly ignorant. Right? How do you know this? Agrippas, you never saw this pasuk? It's a pasuk in Chumash. This is not like a section in Zohar. Right? This is not the Rishon by Yochai. Again, it's a pasuk in Chumash. Pasuk in Chumash. So you never saw this? It just gives you a window. It gives you a window into what was happening towards the end of the Second Temple era. And I will say, with all of that, Agrippas was a good king. I just want to be clear. Agrippas was a good king, but just you see the level of ignorance that was clearly in effect during this era. Remember again, this was the same era where they were going through Kohanim and Gedolim like no one's business, right? No Kohen Gadol lived past the Yom Kippur because he went in and he simply did not come out. This is when the Yerushalmi says he used to begin to tie ropes around the ankle or the waist of the Kohen Gadol because he died inside, and the only way to retrieve his body was to drag him out. So it just gives you a window into what was happening then. So Agrippas gets very emotional because he just read about his own disqualification. And I remember again, what was the reaction of the Chachamim? What did the Chachamim say? Don't worry, we're good. Achinu ata, you're our brother. They both say, here's what's incredible. Right or wrong reaction. Wrong reaction. You know why? It's false. I'll say, it's false. In other words, no, Agrippas was right that his eyes went ahead and swelled up with tears. And the truth is, again, now what should have happened? Should he have abdicated? What should have occurred? I don't know. But Lamaisa, one thing is clear, which is for Chazal for the rabbis to come to placate him and say, no, don't worry about it. Achinu ata, you're our brother, And I both say, is it beautiful to tell another Yid that he's your brother? Absolutely. But that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, Agrippas, you satisfy the criteria of the pasuk. The pasuk says, Som tasim alecha melech mikerev achecha. Agrippas is saying, I don't satisfy the criteria. The Chacham say, sure you do. But he doesn't. What's what the Gemara says? The Gemara says, Ba'osa shah, in that moment, when the Chacham said, Achenu ata, nischayvu soni Yisrael kliya. That's when our fate was sealed for the Beis HaMikdash to be destroyed. Shechnifu lo la Agrippas. And I will say, because they engaged in chanifa, they flattered Agrippas. They said what they said in order to engage in flattery because they wanted to find favor with the king. Rabbi Shmuel Silber will say, by the way, is that not an absolutely incredible idea? Which is also, I'll say, another yesod. Sometimes, I'll say, and this is a very delicate thing to say, but sometimes when people feel bad about something that they did, so we think that our job is to go out and say, no, it's okay. I'll say, sometimes when someone feels bad about something that they did, your job is to say, yeah, you really messed up. Now, don't say it like that. But sometimes making someone think that they didn't do anything wrong in the midst of having done something wrong is a disservice to the individual, right? Because sometimes when we fail in life, what we need is someone to tell us, you really messed up, but let's figure out how to fix this. But simply kind of like whitewashing everything and pretending like there's not a problem is a disservice to the individual. See, I will say, this whole thing was a disservice because now Agrippas is holding on to a position that he should not have had. And not just that, in the effort to placate, they actually sealed the fate of Klal Yisrael for destruction. It's a really incredible yesod. Let's say, we have to get back to this. We are so uncomfortable with feeling uncomfortable, right? So therefore, again, whenever we're in a state of discomfort, right, what's the goal? Get out of the uncomfortable situation as quickly as you can. So say whatever you have to say. It's okay. No, sometimes you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because more often than not, great things come from uncomfortable situations. So avoid the tendency, just say, all's okay. Let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable so we can do some real work in life. But instead, they just placated him. Now, the Gemara understands that the placation, is that a word? Well, no, it sounds good, right? The placation of Agrippas ultimately again was a form of flattery. They wanted something from him. So the Gemara should also listen to this. As well say from the day that literally again the fist of flattery became strong, so judges stopped judging things correctly, right? So judgments became perverted. Actions became undone. And one person was unable to say to his friend, I am greater than you. In other words, I will say, what ends up happening with flattery, I will say, what happens with flattery? Flattery, the lines between right and wrong are totally blurred. Because we'll say, what's the whole chap of flattery? The whole chap of flattery is to make a person feel good about themselves even if they don't deserve it, and to justify actions that are really unjustifiable. So the moment that flattery came in, everything becomes undone. Judgment becomes undone. Maisim, right? Maisim Tovim become undone. Everything becomes undone. Ultimately, I will say that is very interesting. Very interesting, I will say. So, by the way, I'll also point out to you, Rashi says, what's the meaning of the Ein Adam Yachol Lomar L'Chavero Ma'asai Gedol Ma'asecha? He'll say, what does it mean when it says, when a person says, once there was chanifa, once there was flattery, person can no longer say, my actions are greater than your actions. So Rashi says, since the says, as a result of flattery, no one ever objected to sinful behavior. We'll say, with flattery, what happens with flattery? Everything is okay. Everything is okay. And I will say, we totally see this contemporarily, right? We'll say, right, you're not allowed to judge anyone anymore, right? You're not allowed to say something's wrong. So if anything, everything is beautiful. Oh wow, you did this, you think like this, you decide, oh, so beautiful. So we'll say, so what happens when everything's beautiful? What happens when everything is beautiful? Everything becomes ugly. Right? When everything is beautiful, then nothing is beautiful. And ultimately, again, the very moral fiber of society begins to disintegrate. So I'll say that's the power of Hanifa. That's the destructive power of Hanifa. So the Gemara goes right there. There was an exception to this. So you are permitted to flatter the wicked in this world. I will say, why permitted to the Shenemar? Lo yikra only naval nediv ulekili lo yomar shav michrad deba olam hazeh shar. So I think Pasuk's talking about that in the future in olam haba, right, in the or messianic era, we're not going to have to praise the wicked. So what do you infer from that? That here you do praise the wicked. They will say, why would you praise the wicked? Because in this world, they will say, sometimes you have to do what you have to do in order not to provoke people that have the capability to harm you. Others will say, this world sometimes is about navigating all different kinds of complex situations, and sometimes in the navigation of the complex, a person has to say things to certain people in order that they not be provoked. So therefore the Gemara says that if you need to go ahead and flatter the wicked, one is permitted to do that in order to avoid provocation. Incredible. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Armehacha, Kiros Pineo Kimat Tertseni. So this is very interesting. So Rabbi Shimon Rish Lakish says, you want to know the makar that you're allowed to flatter the wicked in order not to provoke them. I'll say, what's the makar? The makar is Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov and Esav. What does Yaakov Avinu do? Yaakov flatters. He flatters Esav. What does he say to Esav? Oh, seeing you, Kiros Pinei Elokim v'Tirtzeni, right? Seeing you is like seeing the image of God. So he's seeing an angelic image, right? So Gemara says, Upligi Rabbi Levi. So Rabbi Levi says, no. When Yaakov says that to Esav, he is not going ahead and flattering him. Rather, what is he doing? To what could the story of Yaakov and Esav be compared? Let's listen to this. So it could be compared to a friend who invites his friend over, and the host realizes that the friend wants to kill him. They're probably not such great friends, but right? So the host recognizes the friend wants to kill him. So what happens? Amarlo, first white line, Tam Tav Shilzeh. The host says to his friend, friend, you need to taste this dish. Right? This dish, it tastes just like that dish I had in the house of the king. Amar Yadale Malka, Mistafa Velo Katale. Ultimately, again, so the friend hears, oh, well, if my host knows what the dishes in the king's house taste like, that must mean what? That he has a connection to the monarchy. If he has a connection to the monarchy, I probably should not kill him. So too, again, when Yaakov says to Esav, seeing your face is like the face of an angel, Esav says, wow, Yaakov sees angels, I probably should leave him alone. We'll stop over here for today. Tremendous sugya. We're not finished yet. We'll continue with the sugya of Hanifa tomorrow. We'll say, shkoyach and a lichtige lag b'omer. All right, have a great day, everyone.